The camera zooms in on a woman's trembling hand, her knuckles white, as she grips a champagne flute. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses is deafening. A smug, handsome man leans in, his new younger wife dripping in diamonds on his arm. "Elara, darling," he sneers. "I'm so glad you could make it. I didn't know they let the staff mingle with the guests." Just as her world is about to shatter, a deep voice cuts through the air like steel. "Julian." The room freezes. A taller, imposing figure steps out of the shadows, his hand possessively on Elara's waist. "I don't believe you've been properly introduced to my fiancé." The divorce hadn't just broken Elara Hayes's heart. It had hollowed her out. Julian Vance, her husband of 10 years, the man she'd supported through business school and his first failed startup, had announced he was leaving her over a $400 plate of risotto at a restaurant she couldn't even remember the name of. "It's not you, Elara," he'd said, a phrase so cliché it was insulting. "It's just, I'm destined for more. We've grown apart." Grown Apart was Julian's name for Chloe Davenport. Chloe, the 24-year-old heiress to the Davenport steel fortune. Julian hadn't just left Elara. He had upgraded as if she were a software model that had become obsolete. The divorce was brutal. Julian's lawyers, funded by the Davenport machine, had painted Elara as an unsupportive, grasping woman. They'd argued that her savings, the inheritance from her grandmother that she'd used to fund his second successful company, was a marital gift. In the end, Julian got the company the penthouse overlooking Central Park and the new shiny wife. Elara got a small cash settlement that was almost gone after her legal fees, and a one-bedroom apartment in Queens with a view of a brick wall. For 6 months, she'd been a ghost. She, an art history graduate with a specialization in Renaissance restoration, was sending out resumes for data entry jobs. The art world was small, and Julian and the Davenports were very, very big. She was quietly, efficiently blacklisted. No museum, no gallery would touch her. She was down to her last $800, staring at an eviction notice when the email arrived. It was from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line was simply, "Consultation request." "Ms. Hayes, we have been informed of your expertise in 16th century Florentine portraiture. Your analysis of the hidden Medici crest in the 2019 Sotheby's Journal was astute. We require your immediate consultation on a private acquisition. An NDA is mandatory. A car will be at your location in 1 hour. E. Reed, COO, Blackwood Holdings." Elara's blood ran cold. Blackwood Holdings. There was only one Blackwood. Damian Blackwood. He was less a man and more of a myth in New York City. A recluse. A shadow who moved markets and toppled governments before breakfast. He was worth, well, no one really knew. More than everyone. He'd inherited a respectable fortune and turned it into an empire of terrifying proportions. He owned shipping tech pharmaceuticals, and it was rumored the souls of several politicians. He was also famously the art world's biggest and most anonymous whale. He didn't loan to museums, he bought them. Elara's hands shook. This has to be a mistake. But an hour later, a gleaming midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom, so silent it seemed to absorb the sound of the city, was parked outside her dilapidated building. The interview, if it could be called, that was not with Blackwood. It was with E. Reed, Evelyn Reed, a woman who looked like she'd been carved from obsidian and dressed in armor like Armani. She didn't ask about Elara's resume. She didn't ask about Julian. She simply placed a high-resolution photograph of a painting on the glass table in the 90th floor conference room. Real or fake, Elara stared at it. It was purported to be a lost portrait by Bronzino. The colors were right. The subject's melancholy was perfect. But the craquelure. Ilara said, her voice hoarse. It's too uniform. It's been artificially aged. And the blue pigment, it's too bright. That's Prussian blue, which wasn't invented until 1704. This is a brilliant fake. But it's a fake. Evelyn Reed stared at her for a long 10-second silence. Then she slid a contract across the table. Mr. Blackwood is acquiring the Celestial Collection from the estate of the Duke of Marlborough. You will be responsible for its cataloguing, restoration, and installation in his private gallery. Ilara looked at the salary. It wasn't just a number. It was a phone number. Why me? Ilara whispered. You could have anyone. You could have the head curator of the Louvre. Evelyn gathered her papers. The Louvre's curator told Mr. Blackwood what he wanted to hear. You told him the truth. Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice dropping, does not care for liars. You start Monday. For 3 months, Ilara had lived in a surreal dream. She worked in a climate-controlled subterranean vault beneath the Blackwood Tower, a space larger than the Frick. She was alone with Titian's Rembrandts and Caravaggios. She hadn't even seen Damien Blackwood. He was just a signature on her paychecks, which had already cleared her debts and moved her into a respectable apartment in the city. She was healing. She was for the first time in a year breathing. Then came the second email from Evelyn Reed. Ms. Hayes, tonight is the annual Celestial Ball at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Mr. Blackwood is the primary benefactor. His newly acquired Madonna of the Stars, from the collection you are curating, is the centerpiece of the event. You will be required to attend as its acting custodian and expert. A car and gown will be provided. 7 p.m. Ilara's stomach dropped. The Met Gala, the absolute epicenter of the world she had been exiled from. A world where Julian and Chloe Vance would be reigning king and queen. She wanted to say no. But you didn't say no to Blackwood Holdings. The dress that arrived was not a loaner. It was a midnight blue silk, so dark it was almost black by a designer Ilara had only ever read about. It was simple, unadorned, and cost more than her college education. When she put it on, she didn't look like a charity case. She looked formidable. The black Maybach slid to a stop on the red-carpeted steps of the Met. Ilara stepped out, clutching her small bag, feeling like Cinderella, acutely aware that the clock was ticking. Ilara Hayes, she said to the clipboard-wielding attendant. The woman's eyes widened. Oh, Miss Hayes. Of course. You're on the Blackwood list. Right this way. She was fast-tracked past the throngs of paparazzi, past the A-list actors and musicians. She was inside the great hall, which had been transformed into a galaxy. Stars and nebulas were projected onto the soaring stone walls. At the top of the grand staircase, where the receiving line usually stood, was the Madonna of the Stars, spotlit in a universe of its own. Ilara's job was simple. Stand near the painting. Look intelligent. Answer any questions from donors who mattered. And above all, do not embarrass the Blackwood name. For an hour it worked. She fielded questions about the painting's provenance, her hands clasped in front of her. She was a professional. She was invisible in her navy dress, a shadow guarding a masterpiece. Then she saw him. Julian. He looked radiant in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo. On his arm was Chloe in a dress that was less a garment and more a declaration of war. It was see-through, diamond-encrusted, and impossible to ignore. They were laughing, holding court, the gravitational center of their own universe. Ilara's instinct was to run, to find a bathroom and hide. But her feet were bolted to the Egyptian marble. They hadn't seen her. Not yet. She turned, trying to blend into the shadows of a sphinx. She could feel a panic attack a-brewing the air, too thin the scent of 1,000 competing perfumes clogging her throat. It's breathtaking, isn't it? Ilara jumped, startled. A man had materialized beside her. She hadn't seen or heard him approach. He was tall, impossibly tall it seemed, in a tuxedo that was so perfectly tailored it looked molded to him. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the painting. The artist's use of lapis lazuli for the Virgin's robe was a statement of devotion, Ilara said, slipping into her professional script. In the 16th century, that pigment was more valuable than gold. It's not devotion, the man said, his voice a low, resonant baritone that sent a shiver down her spine. It's ego. He wanted the patron to know he hadn't scrimped, a receipt painted into the canvas. Ilara turned to look at him fully. Dark hair cut severely, a strong jaw, and eyes. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they held an unsettling intelligence. He was, she realized with a jolt, devastatingly handsome, but not in a movie star way. He was handsome in the way a panther is all potential energy and predatory grace. "You must be Ms. Hayes," he said, finally turning those eyes on her. And her heart stopped. She'd seen photographs, but they did him no justice. They hadn't captured the sheer presence of the man. "Mr. Blackwood," she breathed. "Damien, please." He gave her a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Evelyn was right. You are astute. That Bronzino fake cost the seller his auction license. Thank you for that." I was just doing my job." "Few people do," he murmured. He was about to say something else when a new shrill sound pierced their quiet bubble. Ilara Hayes, my God, is that you?" The blood drained from Ilara's face. Damien Blackwood's head tilted like a predator, sensing a shift in the air. Julian and Chloe were bearing down on them. Julian had a painted-on smile of pure shock, while Chloe's was one of malicious curiosity. "Julian," Ilara said, her voice a thread. "Darling, look," Chloe trilled, clutching Julian's arm. "It's your ex. I almost didn't recognize you without... well, you know." She gestured vaguely, a dismissal of Ilara's entire former life. "Ilara," Julian said, recovering his swagger. He stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Good to see you're landing on your feet. I always said you were resourceful." His eyes scanned her simple dress with pity. "Working an event? Good for you. You always were passionate about art." The implication was clear. She was staff. She was the help. "Chloe," Julian said, turning to his wife. "This is Ilara, the one I told you about." "Oh, this is her." Chloe's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up. She looked Ilara up and down. "I suppose I should thank you. If you hadn't been so boring, he never would have found me." Ilara couldn't breathe. Every humiliation, every lonely night, every legal threat culminated in this one searing moment. She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. She saw a page 6 photographer nearby, his lens starting to drift toward the unfolding drama. I should get back," Ilara stammered, turning to flee. "Nonsense," Julian said, grabbing her arm. His grip was surprisingly tight. "We're just saying hello. In fact, I'm so glad you're here. I wanted you to be one of the first to know." He beamed, pulling Chloe into his side. "We're pregnant, a boy." The air left Ilara's lungs, the child they had tried for. The child the fertility doctors had told him was the problem, but he'd convinced her it was her fault. That was it. The final twist of the knife. She was vaguely aware of Damien Blackwood still standing beside her, silent as a statue. He hadn't been introduced. He was just a void observing. "Julian," Chloe said, preening for the photographer who was now openly snapping pictures. "She looks pale. Maybe you should let her get back to whatever it is she's doing." She turned her smile on Damien, dismissing him as Ilara's +1 or worse, her boss. "And you are?" Julian finally looked at the man beside his ex-wife. His eyes travelled up the flawless tuxedo, the impossible-to-buy watch, peeking from the cuff the aura of cold, hard power that clung to him like cologne. Julian's smile faltered. He knew money, and this was not new money. This was all the money. Julian dropped Ilara's arm. "Julian Vance," he said, sticking out a hand. "Vance Innovations." Damien Blackwood didn't take his hand. He looked at Julian, his gaze so cold it could freeze fire. He looked at Chloe, whose smile was now frozen and uncertain. He looked at the page 6 photographer. And then he did something Ilara would never forget. He reached out slowly and put his hand on the small of Ilara's back. It was a gesture of pure, unadulterated possession. The warmth of his palm seeped through the silk, a brand. "Julian." Damien Blackwood said, his voice clear and cutting, resonating in the sudden silence. "A pleasure." He pulled Ilara slightly in front of him, a shield, or a prize. "I don't believe you've been properly introduced," Damien said, his eyes locking with Julian's. "To my fiancée, Ilara Blackwood." The great hall of the Metropolitan Museum did not, in fact, fall silent. That only happens in movies. Instead, something far more terrifying happened. The ambient noise of 1,000 conversations changed. It was as if a giant invisible hand had pressed mute on the room for a single stunned second before the volume surged back 10 times louder as a single unified wave of whispers. "Fiancé Blackwood. Did he say? Blackwood." The page 6. Photographer, who had been lazily snapping, now looked as if he'd been electrocuted. The pop-pop flash of his camera became a machine gun staccato. Ilara's mind was white noise. She felt Damien's hand, a solid point of heat on her back, anchoring her to this new, terrifying reality. Julian Vance's face was a masterpiece of conflicting emotions. It cycled through smugness, confusion, disbelief, and then finally a deep, ashen horror. His smile, the one that had charmed investors and disarmed her, didn't just fade. It broke. Chloe was worse. Her perfectly painted bee-stung lips, which had been curved in a smirk, fell open. She let out a small, undignified sound like a deflating balloon. That's not funny," she whispered. "I am seldom funny," Damien said, his voice projecting easily over the rising tide of gossip. He looked down at Ilara, and, for the benefit of the room, he softened his expression into something that looked dangerously like affection. "Darling, you were right. The lighting is perfect on the Madonna." Julian's eyes darted from Damien to Ilara and back to Damien. He was a numbers guy. He was calculating, processing, trying to make the data fit. Ilara. My dowdy, broken Ilara. With Damien Blackwood. The man I've been trying to get my father-in-law to introduce me to for 6 months. Fiancé, Julian, finally choked out. Ilara, what? What is this? What joke is this? Before Ilara could form a single word, Damien angled his body, cutting Julian off from her completely. It was a subtle, powerful, and utterly dismissive gesture. "Mr. Vance." Damien said, his tone conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "I believe your wife, Chloe, isn't it? Looks unwell. Perhaps you should find her a seat. The champagne at these events can be notoriously strong." He didn't wait for a reply. With his hand still firmly on Ilara's back, he began to steer her away, parting the sea of onlookers who were staring with unabashed hunger. They moved through the crowd, and a path cleared for them, as if Damien were Moses and the Met Gala was his Red Sea. "Wait!" Julian called out, a note of desperation in his voice. "Ilara, we need to talk." Damien didn't stop, but he did pause, turning his head slightly. "Miss Hayes is no longer your concern, Mr. Vance," he said loud enough for the dozen people nearest to them to hear. "And a word of advice. Your Q3 projections for Vance Innovations are optimistic. You're over-leveraged on the new R&D. I'd check your credit line with First National. I hear they're tightening the belt." It was a kill shot delivered with surgical precision. It wasn't just a dismissal. It was a threat. Julian froze his face, turning from pale to a mottled, ugly red. He knew. He knew. He knew Damien Blackwood didn't just know about his company's finances. He was commenting on them. In this world, that was the equivalent of a public execution. Damien guided Elara through a set of double doors marked "Staff Only" and into a silent, cavernous hallway lined with crates. The second the door clicked shut, the silence was absolute. Elara immediately ripped herself away from him, stumbling back until she hit a wooden crate. "What did you do?" she hissed, her voice trembling with adrenaline and rage. Damien Blackwood merely straightened his cufflinks. He seemed utterly unbothered. "I solved a problem." "A problem?" "A problem." Elara was pacing now, her hands fluttering. You just lied in front of everyone. You called me your fiancé. Julian, Chloe, the press. They're all out there. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Yes," Damien said, his voice calm. "I have just transferred your social, political, and financial capital from non-existent to infinite." "You're welcome." You're welcome. I work for you. This is a new term of your employment," he interrupted, his voice flat. "A promotion, if you will." Elara stopped pacing. A promotion." He stepped toward her. In the dim hallway, he seemed even larger, his shadow swallowing her. "Elara, I am in the final stages of a merger with Aramoto Corp. A $90 billion deal. The Aramoto family is traditional. They are old-world Japanese. They do not trust a bachelor. They see a man my age with no family as unstable, unreliable, a risk." He was close now, his clean, sharp scent of money and ozone filling her senses. "For 6 months, I have been looking for a partner to present. Someone appropriate. Someone who isn't a child, who isn't a fool, and who isn't impressed by my bank account. Someone who, for instance, knows the difference between real Prussian blue and a fake." Elara's mind was racing, catching up. You were planning this." "I was planning to propose this," he corrected. "In private, a business arrangement. You were uniquely qualified. Impeccable taste, a quiet life, no remaining social ties." "You mean a desperate, lonely divorcee?" Elara spat. "I mean a woman with nothing to lose and everything to gain," he countered, without missing a beat. "Your ex-husband's ambush merely accelerated my timeline. It presented an opportunity to humiliate him." Elara finished seeing it now. That, Damien said, a tiny, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips, was a bonus. A market correction, you might say. I've been aware of Mr. Vance's creative accounting for some time. I dislike parasites. Elara leaned against the crate, her knees weak. "So what now? We just go back out there. Tell them just kidding." Damien laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "No, we do not. The page 6 alert has already gone out. Billionaire Damien Blackwood engaged to mystery art curator. The Aramoto board will be reading this by breakfast in Tokyo. The die is cast, Ms. Hayes. So, what you're proposing, a fake engagement. I am proposing a mutually beneficial, long-term strategic alliance," he said. You will play the part of the adored and adoring fiancé. You will attend dinners, galas, and one weekend in Kyoto. You will have access to my homes, my planes, and my security. Your wardrobe budget will be sufficient. And in return, I will not only finalize my merger, but I will ensure the complete and total dismantling of Julian Vance's professional and personal life. I will give you your revenge on a silver platter." Ilara stared at him, horrified and thrilled. It was a dark, ugly feeling, but it was there. The part of her that had been crying in a cold apartment for 6 months sat up and paid attention. I don't want revenge," she whispered a lie. "Don't you?" Damien said, his voice soft, almost seductive. "He took your money. He took your dignity. He took your name. Tonight I just gave you a new one. One that trumps his and his new wife's in every conceivable way. One that right now is making his new father-in-law, Mr. Davenport, pick up the phone to scream at him." He had her. He knew he had her. What are the rules?" she asked, her voice small. "The rules are simple." He ticked them off on his long fingers. 1. We are a team. We present a united front, always. In public you adore me. In private, you will be respectful. 2. No real emotions. This is a transaction. You will not fall for me, Ms. Hayes. I am not a kind man. 3. You will move into the 88th floor penthouse at the Meridian. It's one of my properties. It's secure, for my security chief Arthur will be your shadow. You will not go anywhere without him. And 5. He paused, stepping closer still. He gently tilted her chin up with his forefinger. When this is over, when the Aramoto deal is signed, and Julian Vance is a footnote, you will walk away with a severance package that will make you one of the richest women in this city. You will be free to build any life you want. The Ilara Hayes Foundation for the Arts. Whatever. It's yours. He offered her his hand. Not in marriage, but in contract. Do we have a deal, Miss Hayes? Ilara looked at his hand. She thought of Julian's smug face. She thought of Chloe's boring comment. She thought of her eviction notice. And then she thought of the Madonna of the Stars and the power of being the one who owned it. She put her small, trembling hand into his large, warm one. We have a deal, Mr. Blackwood. Damien, he corrected Ilara. He pulled her hand up, and his storm cloud eyes, never leaving hers, brushed his lips against her knuckles. Now, he said, releasing her, let's go back to the party. We have a lot of people to disappoint. The next morning, Ilara woke up on 1,000 thread count sheets to the smell of fresh coffee and a view that spanned from the Statue of Liberty to the George Washington Bridge. She was in the penthouse at the Meridian. It wasn't an apartment. It was an atmosphere. 3 floors of glass, steel, and minimalist, brutally expensive furniture. It was the opposite of her cluttered, warm life with Julian. It was sterile, silent, and perfect. It was the apartment of a man who didn't live in his homes, but rather occupied them. Damien was gone, of course. He'd left before the sun was up. On the giant marble kitchen island, a single black iPad was propped up. She touched the screen. It lit up with her schedule. 9:00 a.m. fitting. E-read. 11:00 a.m. security briefing. A. Vale tutores. 1:00 p.m. lunch with DB the Grill. 3:00 p.m. ring appointment. Graph beside the iPad was a new sleek black phone and a single credit card. It was black heavy and made of titanium. The Amex Centurion. Her name was etched on the front, Ilara Hayes. A key turned in the lock. Ilara jumped, grabbing a very heavy marble coaster as a weapon. Evelyn Reed walked in, followed by 4 people wheeling in racks upon racks of clothing. "Good morning, Miss Hayes," Evelyn said, not looking up from her own tablet. "You're late. The fitting starts now." I don't... Mr. Blackwood is a public figure, but a private one. You are now an extension of his brand." Evelyn's eyes, as cold as her boss's, raked over Ilara's simple pajamas. "That brand is flawless. Your current wardrobe is insufficient." For 2 hours, Ilara was poked, prodded, and zipped into outfits by a silent team of stylists. Dior, Chanel, Loro Piana. It was an arsenal of quiet luxury. "Mr. Blackwood dislikes logos," Evelyn intoned. "He finds them desperate." At 11:20 a.m., Evelyn was replaced by a man who seemed to be her opposite in every way. He was older, with a kind, crinkled face and a tweed jacket. He looked like a university professor. "Ms. Hayes," he said with a warm British accent. "Arthur Vale, head of security." "Arthur, please," Ilara said, relieved to see a friendly face. "A pleasure." His smile didn't change, but his eyes were scanning the room, checking the windows, the doors. "Now a few simple rules. This phone," he tapped the new black device, "does not leave your side. It is end-to-end encrypted on the Blackwood server. Your old phone is a liability. We've already disposed of it." "Disposed of it?" "Yes. Now the car. You will have a dedicated driver. You will not take taxis. You will not take the subway. If you wish to go for a walk, as the schedule sometimes suggests, you will be accompanied. I'll be Arthur, your uncle's old friend, or we'll have a rotating team of 2. They're good. You won't even see them." This is insane," Ilara said. "I'm an art curator, not a president." "You are the fiancé of Damien Blackwood, ma'am," Arthur said, his tone still kind, but firm. "That makes you a target, for the press, for corporate rivals, for opportunists." He paused. "Your ex-husband, for example." Ilara's blood ran cold. "Julian, Mr. Vance has made 3 calls to the front desk of this building, demanding to see you. He also called your old number, which we are now monitoring 17 times. He seems distressed." "Good," Ilara said, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. Arthur permitted himself a small, genuine smile. "Quite. Now let's discuss panic rooms." Lunch was at the Grill, a power spot in Midtown. Damien was already there in a booth, a phalanx of suits at a nearby table. When she walked in, the restaurant, which had been buzzing with the sound of million-dollar deals, hushed. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere dress, her hair in a sleek chignon. She was Ilara Blackwood now. "Damien," she said, sliding into the booth. "Ilara," he replied, his eyes giving her a swift, appraising glance. "You look appropriate." He pushed a small velvet-covered box across the table. It was not a ring box. "Aramoto-san, the chairman, is a traditionalist," Damien said sotto voce. "He sent a congratulatory gift. He is impressed by my sudden stability." Ilara opened it. Inside, nestled on silk, were a pair of teardrop pearl earrings. They were luminous, perfect, and clearly ancient. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "Wear them tonight. We're having dinner with him. He flew in from Tokyo this morning. He wanted to congratulate the happy couple in person." Ilara's blood drained from her face. "Tonight? But we don't have a story. What do I say? How did we meet? How did you propose?" Damien took a sip of his water. "We met at the Restoration Vault. I was captivated by your passion for the Madonna. I proposed a week ago privately on my yacht in the Mediterranean. We were waiting for the right time to announce. Your ex-husband," he said with a thin smile, provided it. "It's all lies," Ilara said, feeling a wave of nausea. "It is a narrative," Damien corrected. "One that is currently holding the $90 billion Aramoto merger together. Stick to it." He nodded to her plate, which a waiter had just delivered. "Eat." "You're too thin." The afternoon brought the ring. A man from Graf Diamonds arrived at the penthouse carrying a steel briefcase, handcuffed to his wrist. He opened it to reveal 6 rings. They were all staggering. "Mr. Blackwood," the man said, was very specific. He wanted clarity and history. "This one," he pointed to a blinding emerald-cut stone, "is the paragon. D-flawless, 22 carats. It's a paperweight," Ilara said, horrified. "And this one," the man said, his voice reverent, "is the Wittelsbach Blue. Not the famous one, of course, but a sister stone, a 12-carat deep blue diamond, ex-royal collection. Its history is impeccable. It wasn't the biggest, but it was unique. It looked like a storm cloud, like Damien's eyes. "That one," Ilara said, pointing. She slid it on. It was heavy, a beautiful glittering shackle. Meanwhile, across town, Julian Vance was not having a good day. He was in his father-in-law's office. Mr. Davenport, a man who looked like a bulldog in a $10,000 suit, was purple. "You told me she was a nobody," Davenport roared, slamming his fist on his mahogany desk. "A little mousy nothing." "She is," Julian insisted, his voice cracking. "It's a trick. It has to be a trick. She's conning him. Conning him." Davenport laughed, a bark-like sound. "Son, you don't con Damien Blackwood. He's not a person, he's a damn corporation. Do you have any idea what this means?" He threw the New York Post on the desk. The entire front page was a picture of Damien and Ilara, his hand on her back, his gaze protective. The headline, "Blackwood's $1 billion bride," and in smaller print, stuns ex-hubby Julian Vance at Met Gala. "This," Davenport said, jabbing a thick finger at the photo, "is the man I have been trying to get a lunch with for 5 years. The man whose holding company owns the bank that, coincidentally, holds the note on your company. Vance Innovations." Julian's blood turned to ice. "What First National? That's just a bank." "It's a bank, you idiot, that Blackwood bought as a hobby 3 years ago, and now my daughter's ex-husband's new fiancée is the future Mrs. Damien Blackwood." He spat the name out. "It's Ilara," Julian said, his mind spinning. "She's sweet. She's soft. I can talk to her. I can fix this." "You will do no such thing," Davenport roared. "You've done enough. You made this family look like fools. Chloe is hysterical. She's been calling Page 6 all morning, trying to tell her side of the story. I had to have her publicist cut off her phone. But, the baby," Julian stuttered. "You'd better hope that baby holds my daughter's interest," Davenport said, his eyes flat. "Because you, my boy, you are rapidly losing your value. Now get out. I have to make a call. I have to congratulate Mr. Blackwood." Julian stumbled out of the office, his world tilting. Ilara, with Blackwood. It was impossible. It was a violation of the natural order. He had discarded her. She was supposed to stay discarded. He pulled out his phone and dialed her old number again. It went straight to a disconnected message. He thought of the look on Damien's face. "Check your credit line." He hailed a cab, not to his office, but to First National Bank. He had a sudden, desperate need to know the truth. The dinner with Aramoto-san was a masterclass in deception. Damien, who Ilara had only known as cold and calculating, was charming. He was deferential to the older Japanese businessman, refilling his sake, laughing at his very dry jokes. He played the part of the smitten fiancé to perfection. "You are a lucky man, Blackwood-san." Aramoto-san said, his ancient eyes twinkling as he looked at Elara. "A woman of such stillness. It is rare. She reminds me of the gardens in Kyoto. Not loud, but deep." "You are very kind, sir," Elara said, her voice soft. She'd spent the afternoon reading Aramoto's biography. "Your wife, the late Mrs. Aramoto, was also a lover of 16th century art, I read. She wrote a paper on the use of gold leaf in the Kano school." Aramoto-san's eyes widened. He put his sake cup down. "You have read her work." "I found it profound," Elara said simply. Damien watched her, his expression unreadable, as she engaged the old man in a deep, passionate conversation about art, a topic she actually knew. She wasn't faking this part. This was her. When they left the restaurant, stepping into the armored Rolls-Royce, Damien was silent. "Did I do okay?" Elara asked, her fingers twisting the Wittelsbach blue on her finger. "You did okay." Damien turned to her in the darkness of the car. "Aramoto-san just invited you to view his private collection in Kyoto. Alone. He thinks I'm the one marrying up." A strange, unfamiliar warmth spread through Elara's chest. It was pride. "Well," she said, trying to sound nonchalant, "I just told the truth. You are a very, very good liar, Elara." "So are you," she countered. A small smile touched his lips. "Yes, I am." The performance continued for weeks. They were the city's obsession. They were photographed at a private viewing at the Frick. They sat in Damien's box at the opera. They attended a charity auction at Sotheby's. It was at the auction that the first crack in their fake facade began to show. A small, exquisite Degas sculpture of a ballerina was on the block. The bidding was fierce. "It's a fake," Elara whispered to Damien, as the price climbed to $10 million. "Are you sure?" He whispered back. "Positive. The patina is wrong. It's too green, not enough brown. It's a 20th century cast." "Evelyn," Damien said into a tiny microphone in his cuff, "kill the bid." The Blackwood bidder who had been driving the price suddenly went silent. The piece sold to a rival hedge fund manager for $11.5 million. "You just saved me $11.5 million, Damien murmured as they left the auction. "You overpaid for that Picasso last month, so you're still in the red," she replied, testing him. He stopped, and for the first time, he laughed. A real, actual laugh. It was a startling, rusty sound, but it lit up his entire face. "You are going to cost me a fortune, aren't you?" "I'm going to save you one," she retorted, a smile playing on her own lips. The weekend in the Hamptons was the next test. His shack, as he'd called it, was a 20-acre oceanfront compound in Sagaponack that made Gatsby's mansion look like a tool shed. But the house was empty, cold, like the penthouse. "You don't live here, do you?" she asked, as they walked along the private windswept beach. Arthur was a discreet 100 yards behind them. "I work," he said, staring out at the grey Atlantic. "This isn't a home, Damien. It's a fortress, just like the penthouse, just like the vault. Where do you live?" He stopped walking. He looked at her, and for a second, the mask of Damien Blackwood slipped. The man underneath looked lost. "My father," he said, his voice raw, "had a small cabin, upstate. It burned down." "Oh, Damien, I'm so sorry. He was an inventor, Michael Blackwood. He ran a small tech company, Apex Innovate. He poured his life into it. He was brilliant. And trusting." "What happened?" Elara asked, her voice gentle. Damien's face hardened, the mask sliding back into place. "Men like your ex-husband happened, Elara." He started walking again. "He had a partner, a friend. They took him for everything, a hostile takeover. They gutted his company, stole his patents, and forced him into personal bankruptcy. He drove his car off the Tappan Zee Bridge a week later. Ilara stopped dead. My God. Damien. He left a note. Damien said, his back to her. He said, "I'm sorry, son, I wasn't strong enough." So, I became strong enough. I became strong enough for the both of us. The men who did it. I've been told, Damien said, his voice devoid of all emotion, that revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. I prefer to serve it boiling, to watch them scald. He turned to her. The Aramoto deal is the final piece. After that, I will be finished. A cold dread settled over Ilara. This wasn't business. This was a crusade. The twist was not that Julian was in trouble. The twist was the depth of it. Evelyn Reed presented the file to Ilara in the penthouse. Damien was in Tokyo finalizing the terms. Mr. Blackwood thought you should be apprised. Evelyn said, her face a blank slate. Ilara opened the file. It wasn't just about Vance Innovations. It was everything. The partner. Ilara read, her breath catching. The friend who betrayed your father. His name was Marcus Vance. Julian's father, Evelyn confirmed. A small-time fraudster who got lucky. And who was the other partner, the one who funded the hostile takeover. Evelyn's finger tapped the name on the page. Robert Davenport. Ilara looked up, horrified. Chloe's father. Julian. Julian didn't marry into the family that ruined yours. He was the family. Indeed, a confluence of parasites, as Mr. Blackwood would say. Marcus Vance and Robert Davenport used the stolen patents from Apex Innovate to build their first fortunes. Marcus being the fool, he was leveraged his lost it, and left his son Julian with nothing but a name and a chip on his shoulder. Davenport was smarter. He built his steel empire. So, Julian marrying Chloe, he was reuniting the two dynasties of thieves, Evelyn finished. A fact Mr. Blackwood has been aware of for 2 decades. Ilara's head was spinning. So, all this. Me. The engagement. It's all part of this revenge. Mr. Blackwood is a man of efficiency, Evelyn said. He needed a fiancé for the Aramoto deal. He discovered you the woman wronged by the son of the man who started it all. He appreciates symmetry. Ilara felt sick. She wasn't his partner. She wasn't even his queen in this chess game. She was a pawn, a tool, a convenient symmetry. He's been planning this. For 20 years, Ilara whispered, the scale of it crushing her. Longer. He built Blackwood Holdings for the sole purpose of becoming powerful enough to dismantle their lives, piece by piece. He bought the bank that held their debt. He bought the shipping companies that moved their steel. He bought the politicians they had in their pockets. And now, Evelyn slid one more paper across the table. It was a press release dated for the next day. Blackwood Holdings announces finalization of 90-buy Aramoto merger. Simultaneously acquires controlling interest in First National Bank, forcing immediate call-in of all non-performing loans. Vance Innovations, Davenport Steel, both are non-performing. He's going to ruin them. Both of them. On the same day, Ilara said. Market correction? Evelyn said, standing. Arthur will take you to the opera tonight. Mr. Blackwood insists you. Keep up appearances. He returns tomorrow. Ilara was alone. The penthouse, her gilded cage, suddenly felt very, very cold. The blue diamond on her finger felt less like a shackle and more like a bomb. She thought of the man on the beach, the lost boy who missed his father. And she made a decision. Julian Vance was a man on fire, and he was running out of air. The call from First National Bank had come at 9:01 a.m. His entire line of credit, the one that paid his employees, his suppliers, his life was frozen. Effective immediately, he'd sprinted to his father-in-law's office only to find it in chaos. Robert Davenport was sitting in his chair, grey-faced, while two stone-faced men in cheap suits, federal marshals, boxed up his files. Securities fraud, embezzlement, a 20-year-old warrant, Davenport was muttering over and over. He sat on it for 20 years. Julian backed out of the office. Davenport's steel was gone. This left Chloe. He ran home to their penthouse, his penthouse, the one he'd bought with Vance Innovations money. Chloe was there on the floor, surrounded by Louis Vuitton luggage. She was packing. "Chloe, thank God!" Julian cried, rushing to her. We have to nothing!" Chloe spat, not even looking at him. Her face was streaked with mascara. "My father's been arrested. My Amex, the one he pays, was declined." Declined, Julian, at Bergdorf's. "Do you know how humiliating that is?" "Chloe, listen to me," Julian said, grabbing her. "It's Blackwood. He's doing this. It's all Ilara. She's put him up to this. I don't care who's doing it," she shrieked. "It's over. We're ruined. My father, your company, it's all gone." "No," Julian said, a desperate feral gleam in his eye. "No, I know Ilara. She's soft. She's weak. She loved me. I can fix this. I just need to talk to her." "You can't," Chloe said with a bitter laugh. "I've been trying. She's in a fortress. She's Mrs. Blackwood now. She won, Julian. That little nothing. She won." "No," Julian said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "No, she hasn't." He knew where Ilara had to be. The opera, La Bohème. It was her favorite. He'd always hated it. He raced to the Lincoln Center, his last $100 getting him a cab. He didn't have a ticket. He ran to the side entrance, the artist's only door. He was Julian Vance. He had status. A large, tweed-wearing man stepped in his way. "Mr. Vance," Arthur Vale said, his voice still pleasant. "This area is restricted." "I know you," Julian snarled. "You're his man. Get out of my way. I need to see Ilara. Ms. Hayes is not available." "Ilara," Julian bellowed, pushing past him. "Ilara, I'm sorry. Please call him off. He'll listen to you. I'll give you anything. The old apartment at $1 million. Please." The side door opened. Ilara stepped out, her face pale under the single bulb. She was wrapped in a simple dark wool coat. "Julian," she said, and her voice was a stranger's. It was cold, clear, and steady. "Ilara, baby, thank God." He lunged for her, his hands out, pleading. Arthur stepped between them, his hand gripping Julian's shoulder in a hold that made Julian's knees buckle. "Let him go, Arthur," Ilara said. Arthur released him. Julian stumbled, straightening his jacket, trying to regain some dignity. "Ilara," he panted. You look amazing. See this whole thing, it was good for you. But it's gone too far. He's a monster. He's destroying my life, my family. Chloe's pregnant. Ilara. Think of the baby." Ilara looked at him, really looked at him, the man she had loved, the man she had cried over. He was nothing, a shallow, empty, desperate little boy. "The baby," Ilara said, "the one you told me I was too broken to have, the one you lied about for years. That was... Ilara, please. You're not here because you miss me," Ilara said, her voice cutting through the night air. "You're not here because you're sorry. You're here because your line of credit was cut. You're here because your world is ending, and you just assumed. that my world still revolves around you." She stepped closer, and Julian, for the first time, actually recoiled. "He's not a monster, Julian. He's a market correction. Your father, Robert Davenport. You're a debt that has finally come due. But he's using you." Julian screamed, his last shred of control snapping. "It's a sham, that engagement. It's a lie. He's just using you to get at us." "Yes," Ilara said, nodding. "He is." Julian stared, confused. "What? He is using me, and I am letting him. Because you know what, Julian, I'm tired of being soft. I'm tired of being boring. I'm tired of being your dowdy ex-wife. I'd rather be his weapon. It has a symmetry. Don't you think?" She turned to go. "Ilara, wait." Julian grabbed her arm, the one he'd grabbed at the Met. Before Arthur could move, Ilara reacted. It was pure instinct. She turned, and with all the force of 6 months of rage and humiliation, she slapped him. The crack of her hand across his face echoed in the alley. Julian stared at her, his hand to his cheek, his eyes wide with shock. "Don't," Ilara said, her voice deadly quiet, "ever touch me again." She turned, walked past Arthur, and got into the waiting Maybach. Arthur Vale looked at the stunned, whimpering shell of Julian Vance. He reached into his tweed jacket and pulled out a business card. "Mr. Vance," Arthur said, his voice kindly again. "You'll be needing this. It's the best bankruptcy lawyer in the city. Tell him Mr. Blackwood sent you. He's expecting your call." Arthur got in the car. As they pulled away, Ilara watched Julian Vance slide down the brick wall, a broken man in the rearview mirror. She didn't feel joy. She didn't feel pity. She felt free. "He said it was a lie," Ilara said to the darkness in the car. "Yes, ma'am," Arthur said from the front seat. "He's not wrong." "No, ma'am. Take me to the tower." "Not the penthouse," Ilara said. "I need to see Damien. We need to talk. Mr. Blackwood's plane lands in 40 minutes, ma'am. He's not expecting you." "Good," Ilara said, the blue diamond flashing as she clenched her fist. "He and I are overdue for a new set of rules." Ilara was waiting in his office when he arrived. It was 3 a.m. The 90th floor office was dark, save for the blue and white glow of the city below. Damien entered, as silent as ever, his long overcoat still on. He looked exhausted. "The deal is done," he said, his voice flat. "It's over." "Congratulations," Ilara said, turning from the window. "Your 20-year war is won?" "Yes." He walked to the bar, pouring a scotch. "Julian found me tonight," she said, her voice steady. "He's broken. He screamed at me that our engagement was a lie, that you were just using me as convenient symmetry in your plan." Damien said nothing, his back to her. "He was right, wasn't he?" she whispered. She walked to his desk and, with a final painful twist, pulled the Wittelsbach blue diamond from her finger. "I played my part. The Aramoto merger is signed. Julian is ruined. I'm done." She placed the ring on the polished mahogany. It looked small and cold. "I'll take my severance package now." Damien turned his face, a mask of stone. "And go where Ilara, back to your old life, back to being nothing?" "I was never nothing," she retorted. "I'd rather be that than empty, like you. Empty." He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "My purpose has driven me every day for 20 years. And now, it's gone, it's finished." He slumped against the desk, the facade of the Billionaire shattering. I don't know what to do tomorrow." He looked up at her, his eyes stripped bare, revealing the lost boy underneath. "I planned for everything. Every market move, every legal trap. I didn't plan for you." the anger drained out of Ilara, replaced by a sudden aching comprehension. "Damien," she said, her voice soft, "you don't need a 20-year purpose. You just need a morning. You get up. You have coffee. You go to a museum. I don't know how. You start by telling the truth," she said. He looked at her, his gaze raw. "The truth. The truth is, the Aramoto deal stopped mattering the moment I called you my fiancé at the Met. The truth is, this revenge was all I had. Until you." Ilara picked the ring up from the desk. She didn't put it on. She walked to him and pressed it into his palm, closing his fingers over it. "No more lies," she said. "No more transactions. This was a lie, but what we could be. It doesn't have to be." She looked up at him, brave and vulnerable. Let's start tomorrow. Not as fiancé. Not as part of a deal. Just Ilara and Damien." He stared at the ring in his hand, then at her. A small, slow, real smile, the one she'd seen on the beach, touched his lips. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice thick, "we could go to the Frick. You can tell me again why that Picasso is overpriced." "I'd like that," she whispered, a tear escaping. He didn't kiss her. He just reached out his hand, gentle, and rested his forehead against hers. As the first light of dawn began to cut through the darkness, they stood together, two broken, powerful people, finally free, and that everyone is the story of Ilara and Damien. It started with a cruel ex, a public humiliation, and a deal with a billionaire. But in the end, it wasn't about the revenge. It was about two broken people finding their new beginning. Julian and Chloe got what they deserved, a market correction of their own, while Ilara got, well, she got everything. What do you think was Damien's 20-year plan for revenge too much? Or was it exactly what Julian and his family deserved? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama twists and ultimate redemption, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to see a Julian get what's coming to them. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell so you never miss another story. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.